we're going to talk about the C-suite today and the C-suite at infrastructure companies. In your experience, and you work with C-suite people all the time as a headhunter, what is keeping them up at night?
I mean, interestingly, I've been speaking to a lot of C-suite leaders, and one of the key things that came out, which is even before I answer that question in full, is that there is a shortage of people that can do this job. It seems to be the case that looking for a competent chief exec is a bit of a sales pitch now, because anyone who's any good that is coming to this industry is also quite concerned about being competent, but also the political risk involved in coming to a C-suite role. So, for example, you could be joining a country where there's been a promise of some SMRs being built, but then nothing happens for 3 years because of the political flakiness of the country. So that's the challenge, I think, for search firms to find talent that understanding of that. But in terms of what's keeping the leaders up at night, the general consensus is that the biggest challenge leaders face is getting projects actually built. You know, what's been happening over the last 10 to 15 years is that the focus on upfront work has actually gone down. So the things that worked really well historically, like HS1, for example, and the common factor was that the work that was done up front, like the drawings, the engineering, the construction planning, the supply chain, there was lots of details. And only once that was all done did projects go ahead. It's really interesting now to see that when projects start, people can't wait to spend money. And there needs to be a focus on doing this properly. So the biggest challenge really for anybody being brought in is that they are certain they can do things properly. Alongside that, I think the other big challenge would be cybersecurity and the risks involved in that. Infrastructure systems such as water treatment, transportations, they've relied heavily on legacy systems, and they're just not designed with the scale of cybersecurity threats that we're dealing with right now.
So am I right to actually read between the lines that people are concerned when they apply to these really senior roles, damage to personal brand? Because if you get at the helm of a mega project and funding is cut, if you get at the helm of a mega project and the systems are legacy systems and you get hit by a cybersecurity attack, it will be your name that's going to be mentioned.
Many senior engineers and operators are retiring, and there's a shortage of younger talent that's got that traditional civil expertise, shall we say, but also digital fluency. So the chief leader that's coming into this role is conscious of the fact that aside from the political issues to deal with getting projects from start to end, that there's a workforce drain, there's a cybersecurity threat that needs to be taken seriously rather than just outsourced as an IT function.
What are the biggest blind spots? You mentioned that there's a bit of a generational gap, there's a bit of a digital gap. Are people out of step who are coming into these roles with what's going on larger as society, for instance, things like AI?
I think that cybersecurity threats were delegated to IT departments, and even attacks, as they became more sophisticated and disruptive, all it did was reveal a fragility in the legacy systems. And there's a lack of real-time threat detection. So I think that that's a blind spot in how serious that is. The other blind spot, as we mentioned, is the workforce transition. It was seen as a talent issue. It was given to HR. It wasn't seen as a strategic risk, which is that actually there is this skill gap, which is a threat to the operational continuity. You know, the retirement of skilled labor, coupled with the need for digital, cyber, and systems expertise, it creates a gap. I think another blind spot, which is becoming more and more relevant, is that leaders are realizing that the bottleneck could also be them. The bottleneck could be that leaders don't wake up thinking they're the problem, but sometimes they could be, and industries like utilities, government, not-for-profit, where projects are run on tight margins and complex regulations, the leader's self-awareness makes the difference between that project being successful or a costly failure. What I'm finding out, speaking to more and more C-suite people, is the best leaders, that they don't just assess their teams, they're assessing themselves.
And what are the qualities they need to highlight coming into critical infrastructure roles? So whether it be nuclear, energy, utilities.
Yeah, I think the best leaders are flexible across those sectors in particular, so nuclear, utilities, transport, and anything with the energy side or infrastructure, the complexity, regulation, the social impact of these sectors, it demands a type of leadership profile, somebody who's got strategic foresight, but also operational grit.
Let's talk about AI. Everyone's
Yes.
talking about AI. How much do these leaders need to know themselves on AI? I've heard myself, AI is not a IT problem, it's a board level problem. What do they need to bring onto the table?
Well, the first thing is that, as you've just said, it's not an IT upgrade. AI, it's a board level issue. It's not a technical function. It's a strategic lever. I think that the key thing with the C-suite leaders is that they're grappling at the moment with the conflict, which is basically silos that are created within businesses due to the adoption of AI. There's a research group called Workplace Intelligence that have surveyed 800 C-suite leaders and employees, and around 2/3 of these business leaders have reported that there's a division between the IT teams and the rest of the business, as well as between execs and employees. Some employees have actually admitted to sabotaging their company's AI strategy. There's 41% of Gen Z and millennial workers who are pushing back and refusing to use AI tools or ditching the training. The headline really is that the best leaders know AI is not an IT upgrade. It's not a bolt-on. It reshapes talent, it reshapes risk, customer engagement, and even regulatory relationships. The best leaders are seeing AI as a business model transformation. It's a driver of competitive advantages. It is really using the best parts of AI for the best way for the business to succeed.
How competent do they need to be as a person in using these tools?
I think that there's a change. I guess we're going into personal branding here a little bit, because the C-suite person in critical infrastructure, the traditional playbook was a low profile, stay safe type of hire, but expectations around transparency and trust and leadership have evolved. And the C-suite person now needs to have that AI knowledge as well, or at least have the ability to understand the ethics of AI and bring that in alongside other areas like energy transition, smart mobility. These are not back office, backstage issues.
The great thing about infrastructure is it's slightly ahead of the curve in terms of, they've always had innovation in their DNA, because innovation, grand scale innovation in reactors, and they've been leading in manufacturing those big projects.
Yeah.
But they're behind the curve, and they're conservative when it comes to things like AI. Some of the latest thinking in organizational, there's going to be a lot of disruption. So I think there is that tension, how they're going to manage an industry that's really conservative and very, of course, a threat at cybersecurity and all of that. How they're gonna adapt to the new times.